What's going on, guys? Fearmaky here, bringing you another video. Let's get into it. Let's roll deep and keep grinding out there, guys. Let's dive into the video. Let's go. Alright guys, Fearmaky here, bringing you another guide, this time on UltimateViessa. My god, she is the AoE goddess if you ask me. She's absolutely amazing to play, really quick, a lot of burst damage, burst AoE, really fun. Anyways, let's get down to the build. For weapons, I'm using the Enduring Legacy. I'm not going to go deep into the Enduring Legacy and the mods. I will show you what I'm doing. If you want to get an in-depth explanation as to why I chose these mods and show the true test of them, I'll link the video below in the description. You guys can go and see that Enduring Legacy video. But I'm using Enduring Legacy as a filler gun. It's an absolute monster when it comes to a filler damage between your cooldowns and mana coming back up. But this is what I'm doing with it. For the secondary gun, I'm using Azacia's Devotion. I barely use this gun. Viessa is a very skill usage class, so you'll barely be using guns with her depending on what build you're doing. Boston, you'll be doing Enduring Legacy, and then you'll be rotating Blizzard. For waves, you'll just be spamming your skills. I do have the Clairvoyance, which synergizes extremely well with Viessa as far as what it does, the unique ability, which reduces chill resistance by 20% and slows the mobs down by 70%. But I do not have this leveled. I have not played around with it as much. My experience with it right now, it doesn't flow well. It doesn't feel good to cast my skills and then channel the beam, and then my skills back up again and the beam didn't even get to channel all the way. I am slowly starting to mod it to get to what it needs to be, but we'll save that for another video in the future. But for now, I am using Enduring Legacy as a filler. For the Reactor, you want Frozen Mechanics Reactor with chill skill power and tech skill power. I'm using skill critical hit rate right now. It's one of the best ones that I got for Enduring Legacy. But if you had the option, you should go with skill critical hit rate and skill critical hit damage. So if I could change mine with the Enduring Legacy, I would keep the crit rate and I would go skill critical hit damage. That would feel better for me. But that's something you guys can also do. For the components, I'm using the Slayer set. It is sort of a glass cannon build whenever you use Slayer set, period, because it's missing some HP on the auxiliary power and as well as the sensor. but you can swap out another module, which is the polar, and I'll show you that here in a second. But anyways, I'm using the Slayer set with MP recovery out of combat as a must, or else you're going to run out of mana and not know what to do in any situation, even dungeons. For the sensor, I got max MP, also mandatory, so you feel better while casting your abilities. You're not running dry and all the time. For the memory, I got max shield, shield recovery in combat, and defense for added toughness. Highly recommend that because she is sort of squishy. And for the processor, I have max HP and max shield. And item acquisition distance, it just makes it easier to farm and run around. If you wanted to do a tankier setup, I would go with the polar for the sensor and the memory with the polar set, which will give you chill resistance. Chill power. I'll show you here what it looks like. Where's chill? There it is. It will give you 6.2% chill skill power. In addition to that, it will give you max HP of 484, which is a multiplier to your stats. It'll make you tankier. All right, but that's what I would do for a 2-piece. You can also go with Annihilation for extra duration, but the choice is yours. For your Descendant modules, so with Viessa, with Cold-Bloodedness, this changes your number 2 skill, Frost Road, into Cold-Bloodedness. And what Cold-Bloodedness does is increases the duration of the buff when you use it. It gives you 5% skill power, reduces your mana cost by 20%, and reduces your cooldown ratios by 20%. So your ultimate goes from a 19-second cooldown right now that I have, down to like a 7.2. Let's see. 7.1 second cooldown. You cannot go below 6 seconds, so I did not see the need to push for it. You can get 6 seconds if you have a skill cooldown reactor on there. I would not recommend that though. I would go for more damage. And with this setup that I have, with the 8.7 second duration with a 7-second cooldown, it allows me to overlap the blizzards by 1.5 seconds, 1.6 seconds to be exact. The way Blizzard works, you can see it lasts 6 seconds base and it deals damage in every 2-second intervals. But the way Viessa works is 1 millisecond over the 6-second base duration will give you an extra tick of the blizzard. So I'm at 8.7 seconds, so therefore I'm going to get my ticks to tick 6 times with the explosion at the end, which is massive. So always when you're building your Viessa and looking at duration, even if you can get 0.1 second more than the base duration, you'll get an additional tick from the blizzard, which will increase your damage substantially. So I definitely recommend that. For your number 1 skill, you have Frost Shards. It's you fire a shard at a target and explodes in the AoE radius. Not that big of a radius with this bossing build, I will call it. Again, Cold-Bloodedness is your buff. The Cold Snap is a huge AoE in front of you. It goes up to 10 meters in front of you. You can definitely extend this up to like 30 meters, which is insane. I barely use this skill though. It costs a lot of mana, and the damage return, not as good for me. This is what you're going to be spamming when you're doing the boss. When you saw that 18-second Devourer kill, was all Blizzard. I just casted Cold-Bloodedness, casted Blizzard, and just used my Enduring Legacy as a filler. And that's how I do every fight. It's a very active build, very low cooldown, so you can opt to go with Frost Shards and casting Cold Snap, but you're going to run out of mana very quickly. Even with MP recovery in combat and MP recovery modifier, that will not give you enough mana back unless you sacrifice a lot of damage in mods to increase your MP recovery here, which you can do that if you want. I'm not doing it for me. Anyways, with Viessa, Ice Spheres, upon using a skill to put an enemy into an ice shackle, creates an ice sphere that flies around. Pretty much as you attack and the targets get debuffed, you'll spawn 3 orbs around you that will automatically fire itself at the target, dealing more burst damage. I'm not going to get down to the crazy details on it, but the best way to show you here, see at the moment I attack that guy, I crit, he's got ice shackle on him, an orb spawns, and then it fires automatically into the target. That's all it does. That actually does a lot of damage though, as you're spamming your skills and casting your abilities. and it's free damage, right? It's free actions per minute because it's something that's happening automatically as you're doing your skills. So those are the abilities for Viessa. The mods, Cold-Bloodedness is your class mod that you definitely want to use to kill bosses quick, efficiently. I went for Battleless Stamina for the max HP skill duration. Focus on Chill for the skill cooldown and Chill power multiplier. Skill extension for the skill duration. Spear and Shield for toughness and the skill power. Emergency measures for crit rate, crit damage on skills. Mid-air maneuvering for the 10 free capacity, and also the mobility module that I love using. MP conversion for the skill cooldown. Yes, you take a hit on your MP, but you need that for your cooldown reduction to spam your blizzards more often. Nimble fingers again for cooldown. Front lines for skill crit damage, skill crit rate. Skill concentration for crit damage, and skill insight for skill critical hit rate. What that does to our characters is give us 207% critical hit rate, 207% crit damage. This feels really good for me. You might ask why you're not using Dangerous Ambush. Came to find out Dangerous Ambush at the end of the day is an addifier. It's not a multiplier. It is good damage still, don't get me wrong. But with Viessa having so low cooldowns, I'm not banking on the boss going down for 3 or 4 seconds and doing a lot of damage. I'm focused more on doing damage consistently, efficiently, effectively over the course of the fight. With Lepic, it worked out, and I might even change Dangerous Ambush from Lepic in the future. We'll see how that goes. But for Lepic, it works out because when he's down, he's dishing out massive amounts of damage. You're talking 10 million damage within 3 seconds with his orbs, if not more. So it just makes sense to amplify that damage so much more. With Viessa's Blizzard, in the ticking damage intervals of 2 seconds, having the boss go down and sacrificing the mod slot for Dangerous Ambush for me just didn't feel well. It wasn't good for me. So this is how I built my Viessa. I'm sure that there's thousands of builds out there, guys, but this is how I built her. I like how this flows. I like how it feels in fights and in group play. So I recommend you guys do this as well. So now for the wave build, I chose Absolute Zero. I'll show you the mod quickly. Absolute Zero. When using a skill, Ice Shackles is no longer inflicted, therefore the targets aren't slowed. When the skill lands a critical hit, it inflicts Frostbite on the target, which is a freeze that lasts, in my case, I think it's 2 seconds. 2.5 seconds, which is pretty long time, but the mobs aren't going to live when you do this build, believe me. Unless they scale the game higher, or you're fighting some really difficult, like 250% plus hard dungeon content, the mobs aren't going to live with the build I'm going to show you. But Absolute Zero is the Descendant module that we're using. But let's go back here to the reactors. So what that mod does is it changes all of your abilities to Chill skill and Singular. It removes the fusion from the other abilities. So you want a reactor with Chill and Singular on it. I chose skill, cooldown, and duration. I wish it had better rolls, but this is my mobbing and wave build reactor that I would use and recommend you guys using. For the components, I'm using 2-piece Polar with MP recovery and max HP roll, double HP roll there for massive survivability. And I'm using max MP and MP recovery in combat. You're going to need this. Make sure you have MP recovery in combat and max MP. An MP recovery modifier with max HP as well on the Annihilation set here. And max shield recovery modifier. This is good enough for what we're doing for mobbing. So we have 2-piece Annihilation, all right, and we have 2-piece Polar for the 6.2% skill power. That's the components. For the modules, you have to have Absolute Zero. This is by far the best mobbing mod that she has. I tested all the other ones out. They feel pretty good. Even Hypothermia feels well in high waves, like the 38 round waves. They feel pretty good towards the end, but the wave build just feels a lot better. I chose Absolute Zero, chose Battleless Stamina for survivability and duration. You're gonna see this mod across all of my builds. Focus on Chill for the skill cooldown, skill expansion for the range. Range is very important for this build. I'll explain to you why. Maximize range for another 94% range. Skill power modifier takes a hit, but that, you know, that's additive, so it's not a big deal. So 92% range here, 94.4% range here. Skill critical hit rate and skill crit damage. The mid-air maneuvering for the 10 capacity module slot. MP conversion for the cooldown reduction. Nimble fingers for cooldown reduction. Front lines for skill critical hit damage, crit rate. Skill concentration, crit damage. And skill insight for skill critical hit rate. So when you put on absolute 0, it buffs all of your abilities on your bar, and everything becomes chill and singular. All right. And what absolute 0 does is when a skill lands a critical hit, creates an ice sphere that flies around the ice sphere that it hits, that is created, flies to a nearby enemy, it deals damage to the hit enemy, and deals burst damage to enemy's hit. On critical hit, it inflicts frostbite to the enemy. Notice that it said burst damage. Frostbite freezes them for 2.5 seconds. If you go look at the skill information here, I'm down to a 5-second cooldown. I mean, the absolute 0 frostbite is down to a 5-second cooldown, but the skill that I spam, frost shards, is down to a 1.8 second cooldown. You literally spam this skill and kill everything on the screen. And look at the explosive damage range. Went from 3.5 meters to 10 meters. All right, and the frostbite duration is 2.5 seconds. This right here allows you to mob, which I'll show you an example, and kill everything on the screen wherever you fire your shard. You don't even have to be precise, and it just explodes. Your frost roads just leaves a debuff on the ground and deals damage. We only use this for the 30% movement speed. We do not use it for damage. Yes, it helps with the damage, but it's not really for that. Cold snap, your range goes from 10 meters up to 28.7 meters. I barely cast this though because it costs a lot of mana, but I do use it as a filler if we have full mana. And then your ultimate, 15-second cooldown, lasts for 7.4 seconds. And the radius on it, continuous damage rate, goes from 4 meters to 11 meters. The explosion damage radius, because we're running such a high skill effect range modifier, explodes at 17.2 meters. This explosion is massive, and I'm going to show you guys. So when you're doing mobbing and you're doing waves, you can literally solo waves, even better than Lepic, honestly. Every wave that I've done so far, we've been able to complete it, no matter what map that we do, with the exception of Fortress. I take that back. That map is cracked with how crazy the mobs come in from all sides. But I think I made it the furthest with Viessa, with her ability to drop her blizzard on one lane and cover it while spamming her frost shards at another 1 or 2 lanes, and just insane uptime. Her actions per minute are just probably the highest I've played of all the characters so far right now. Actually, I think Kyle and Ajax can be pretty heavy intensive on actions per minute as well. But anyways, that's what we're doing there. So if you see our stats, we're running with 186.7% skill effect range. This is similar to what I'm doing with Lepic for the wave build, but we're going with massive critical hit rate and critical hit damage because it complements absolute 0, and you just wipe the whole screen. So what this looks like in game, when I fire that, it fires everywhere, but let me show you the range. See, I'm firing up here, still hitting the mobs at the bottom. I'll shoot it up top. That's a little fire right there. Boom. It's crazy. So you don't have to aim right at them, but you can see if I'm firing here and it's hitting the mobs, anything you hit on the right is going to hit the left, anything you hit on the left is going to hit the right, and so forth. Now let me show you the radius on the explosion. So we're going to drop the blizzard here. It's going to cover 1.5 squares. So it's not touching the mobs, but you can see how big it is. And then watch when it explodes. It's going to expand out to here. See? And it hit all the mobs. It's just absolutely crazy. And then when you crit, you spawn these 3 ice spheres around you, and they keep firing and exploding as well. It deals so much damage. I mean, you're talking 800,000 crit damage just with a 1.8 second cooldown. Like, nothing lives. So you drop your blizzard, hitting for 1.2 million there, and then you just keep firing your frost shards for 800,000. And everything is a crit because you have maximum crit, so it's crazy. anyways, that's what we're doing with her wave build. I'm not going to get too deep into hypothermia. I have used it for mobbing on higher skills, but this is what I'm doing with it. It's pretty much the same exact loadout as wave build. You just swap out the transcendent mod. The one thing I want to highlight with my setup on UltimateViessa is no matter what build you choose, if you mod your slots this way, you can use every single transcendent mod on her and not have to worry about it. So you can see you can just weave in and out with any mods that you want, with any of her transcendent mods, I'm sorry, that you want. All right, and all of it will work. But we're not going to get deep into hypothermia. It is pretty decent. It's good dot damage. I haven't pushed it to the limit on bossing or waves yet. I have tested it, but I'll leave you guys just with a picture of what I do for hypothermia if you guys wanted to do it. But I mainly use Fearmaky code for bossing, and I use the wave build to do waves and do world content and do dungeons, etc. Okay, I hope you guys like the build, like the guide. I hope you learned something, and please let me know what other builds and classes you'd like to see. I'll show you here, built every single class in the game almost, and I have starter builds for every single one of them. I'll show you my presets. I am farming right now for Valby. I'm cooking her right now, Ultimate Glay and Bunny. Luna I haven't gotten yet, and Ajax I got a couple of parts. I'm almost there. And I still have to level Eugen. But I do have presets for every single class and how I did their loadouts and the gear, etc. What I'm using, so I moved some stuff around. I got some other mods, so that's why I gotta update my sets there. But let me know if you guys want to see the beginner guides, what you use as a starter, how you transition from Lepic and other classes into these classes. It helped me tremendously by putting on the mods that I would recommend to start out with and level them out. So I can do a guide on each class as beginner and what I did to level up and get to level 40 and farm all the catalysts. If that's something you guys would like to see and it would be helpful, or if, I'm sure there's already a lot of that information online. I'm not sure about beginner guides, but if that's something that would be helpful and useful, let me know. I'll be more than happy to put some quick guides together on that. If not, I'll focus more on the in-game guides for the classes I'm playing and pushing them to the limit, okay? We'll see you guys in the next video, and roll deep.